Hey Ballston Spa, the physics department decided to be a good time for a fun physics field trip. So where better place to take people that you care about than the circuit breaker box. You may have heard in the fall that I was having a new garage built. I know it looks a little big. Current estimates are that it holds about 135,000 rolls of toilet paper. Don't ask me how I know. So how do you get power out to the new car barn? Well, you gotta run conduit, 18 inches underground, 120 feet, so you can put in a new circuit breaker box. So let's go take a look at the box. Like any good child of the 80s, I had a clapper installed. Well, here we are in the car barn. Let's hit the lights. Just like room 324, one pump please. All right, let's check out the circuit breaker box. It's probably not as full as the ones that you've seen because this was just installed for the garage. But we do have two circuits right now. We have a 20 amp circuit breaker and we have a 15 amp circuit breaker, and you'll notice there are two wires up here. It's the yellow one that's feeding the 20 amp breaker, and it's the white one that's feeding the 15 amp breaker. This is what the circuit breakers look like before they're installed. It's a little on-off toggle switch, and then they get installed in the banks that are there. To me, the interesting part is electrical ground. We've talked a lot about ground in class. This cable comes out of the breaker box, goes out through the side of the garage, and is driven into good old ground. I'll show you. Well, here we are outside the car barn. Here's where the power comes from the house and into the garage, and you'll see the ground cable when it comes outside is right here, and it's driven into, you guessed it, the ground with a big old steel cable, and that cable from inside is attached to it. Anything bad happens electrically, the electrons have a place to go. When we were over at the breaker box, I was discussing the two different wires, the yellow and the white. The yellow, which is 12 gauge wire, is a little thicker. When you buy wire, it is sold by, wire thickness is sold by gauge. This is 12 gauge wire. The lower the number, the thicker the wire. It's a thicker wire, and it's typically used on 20 amp circuits. If you have a 15 amp circuit, which is one of the ones that we have in the breaker box, you can go to a little bit thinner wire, a little bit cheaper wire, and this is 14 gauge wire. 15 amp circuits are typically run on 14 gauge wire. Some other gauge wires that may enter your life. Here is some speaker wire. This is 16 gauge copper speaker wire if you need to run speakers from your stereo. I know there's a lot of Bluetooth speakers these days, but speaker wire is still a great way to go. And here's very cheap speaker wire. This is 22 gauge as compared to the 16 gauge wire that I just showed you earlier. Now, why would you want to spend more money for thicker wire instead of keeping the cheaper, thinner wire? Well, our equation from earlier in electricity, resistance is rho L over A, where A is the cross-sectional area or the thickness of the wire. The thicker the wire you have, the bigger the cross-sectional area, which means the lower the resistance. Why wouldn't you want to have a lower resistance? Because that means you're wasting less of the potential difference getting the electricity to the device. Last week, Ballston Spa teachers were featured in a video called Ballston Spa Cares. I was not in that video, but make no mistake about it, I care. I care about your physical well-being, and I care about your mental well-being. So what should you and I do during this unfortunate time off? I suggest we continue to work hard as students and teachers. I suggest that we exercise and that we pursue our hobbies. And then when we get back, we'll be better than we were before. Stay healthy, Ballston Spa.